Hello, and welcome to Between the Lessons. I'm Susan.
And I'm Kavan.
Today, we have an interesting conversation. We are going to talk about the reality of being in education, which means that we are navigating difficult relationships and dynamics at schools with students, with parents, and with colleagues. I think this is a really important conversation because difficult dynamics, interactions, and exchanges are inevitable. I've been at 5 schools, and I've had challenges at all 5 schools, and I actually think that I'm a somewhat easy person to work with. That might not be true, but that is what I think. But this is just the nature of working in a school, in a community, and with people. And to be fair, as much as I am sitting here saying that I think I'm an easy person to work with, I am sure that there are people who have worked with me who would say that I wasn't so easy. So again, it's just the nature of the beast. So we'll be offering different perspectives and experiences from the teacher perspective and then also the administrator perspective. We'll present different scenarios and just offer how we would respectively handle each of them. And we're not saying that these are the right ways to go about these situations. What we are saying is that this is how I would handle it. This is how you would handle it. And hopefully we can just offer some insight into these types of situations and it'll resonate with some and maybe even be helpful to others. So are you ready?
Let's go for it.
Okay, are we starting with students?
Sure.
Okay, so the first scenario that we have is with a young male student who is struggling with executive functioning skills. And he's doing okay, depending on who you ask. But definitely, according to every single adult in his life, he is not meeting his intellectual potential and capabilities. Not at all. Certainly disengaged at times in multiple classes. He does love to be on the computer, specifically playing video games. And with that, doesn't always complete work. Definitely doesn't always complete work. Homework is not turning work in. So do you want to start us off or...
I mean, what you're describing is pretty much this stereotypical young male from middle school all the way up through almost probably middle of college. Because that prefrontal cortex, we're a hot mess up there. And we certainly develop a lot slower than people who identify biologically female. So,
and that's been research now.
Absolutely.
And that boys tend to develop at a slower rate than girls.
Right, and the executive and the research even now more shows the executive capabilities of a male typically doesn't fully develop until the mid-20s. And if you have ADHD, you're 2 years behind even more after that.
Wow. Okay.
So.
That being said then, that is a real struggle for a young male to be in a classroom.
Absolutely.
Where there are a lot of distractions, right? There are a lot of probably directions. There's a lot of expectation and a lot of just rule following. And from what I've seen as a high school teacher, and I've taught boys 9th through 12th grade, it can definitely be a struggle just from the teacher end too. I am, even before the pandemic, I have been a bit of a control freak about devices in the classroom. So I say when the computer is open and I say when the computer is closed. And there are always students, and certainly male students, who will keep on trying to open that computer and play video games in class. And during the pandemic, it was worse. Oh my gosh.
And as many firewalls you put up and security systems you put in place, they will figure out a way to circumvent it.
They will.
Absolutely.
They will. So I guess as a teacher, what I try to do is I do assist with organization. This year and last year, I do have Google Drive folders for all my students that I have obviously ownership over, so I can access all those docs, and I will put docs in there. So that is something that I think has been helpful as far as staying organized, and when work needs to be completed, that I know the doc is in there, and then they also know it's in there. And then when it's completed, it's not like they have to take it out of their bag or remember to put it in the bag and then take it out and give it to me. It's already in there for work that's online. Yeah.
I think for people who are entering education or maybe have just started, like you go to teacher school to learn about content and delivery, and there's certain aspects of the job of being a teacher that you don't really recognize. I was just speaking with a friend of mine who just changed his career and to become a teacher, and he's like, Kavan, the thing that I struggle the most with my class is organization. Like teaching them how to be organized. And how you and I went to school and learning about structures and systems is something that either is not being as thoroughly discussed or introduced when they were younger students, or it's just a different type of learner these days. The type of with the struggle of technology, woven in and sometimes interfering. I think the skills of organization, of like digital organization, has to be considered, right? And you have to spend time doing. I think a lot of teachers want to jump in onto their creativity, into the content of their class, without spending time of how to structure even just think simple as turning something in, right? Like you mentioned, like no longer is the day they're turning physically something into you. They have to turn something in digitally to you, and then they're on the platform, wherever your school is using. There may be some bells and whistles of notifications of like they have to actually check a box to complete it. Before it's actually turned in.
Yeah, schools have learning management systems now, and those are just increasingly more important because it's the communication between the teacher and the student, sometimes in the classroom, but certainly outside of the classroom when, if the kid has to finish homework or complete something. So, and now I think my school last year asked for all classes. They wanted a more uniform template. They wanted kids to see the same sort of, whatever the interface was and whatever the buttons are, because navigating different pages was, it was too difficult for them. Or I don't want to say it's too difficult for them, but they just felt it was like unnecessarily difficult. So that digital organization is super important.
Yeah, and I think, actually, I didn't, as an educator, I certainly had routines and expectations of how my students, would take notes in class, organize their notebook. I mean, I was a science teacher, so there was a very formal way that I was weaving in the engineering design process in how they took notes and how they did labs and how they, created data or analyzed data. However, I never talked to any of my colleagues about their systems. So, when I was teaching in Chicago public schools and then eventually here in DC, I have had my own system and I created it and it worked for my class, but not realizing until I was an administrator, the overall student experience, that there could be several systems they have to learn throughout the day. And I think coming out of COVID, during COVID, it really hit me, especially that my level at the early, like late elementary, middle school level, that one, their brains are not hardwired to, run on several different organizational systems. Two, we're transferring from in-person classroom to online, right? So you're asking a 10-year-old to suddenly jump to a high school, college level form of organization. Because back before,
and even at high school level, it was hard.
Right. In 2020, like there were not many virtual classes other than, maybe universities, right? So transferring that, it was an eye-opening experience as an educator, as an administrator, to see, wow, like we're going to lose a lot of kids. On top of the lack of interaction, you're going to lose a lot of kids due to executive function and management. So if I learned anything as an educator or an administrator coming out of the pandemic, is that I needed to double down on helping our students with these executive skills.
You do. You really, really do. Certainly, even in high school, 9th and 10th grade, I have found that I have to think about the organization piece and how the kids understand organization in order for me to get the best out of the student and for them to be able to access the work, complete the work, and then submit the work. So all of those details have to be thought out. It does, I think, get a little better at 11th and 12th grade, but it doesn't totally go away. So I do think that is really important, for students like that. The other piece I want to offer for those, and this has mostly in my experience come from males, and I do think it fits into this archetype, is I've had more conversations with male students about the point of school. So like that motivation piece. I mean, I think that is related to this scenario, to this type of student. Would you agree? Because I've had so many conversations. They're like, what is school for? Why do I need to learn this? You know, like, especially now with AI and all the technological tools, and how is this going to serve me? And I just find that intrinsic motivation and that understanding of what place or what meaning does this really have in my life and my future, that until that's answered in a meaningful way, that intrinsic motivation just does not kick in.
Yeah, that's been actually a great question that, certainly researchers have been asking for the last 10 years about the engagement piece. And, based on their research has been based on gender, although, there's more and more now about gender fluidity and looking into but generally biologically, the biological brain for, males and females have, over time, we've learned to develop at different rates. And because of the slower growth of that prefrontal cortex, it certainly encourages the lack of engagement for males in particular. I think that what schools or teachers who are like having a little more success with this is actually including the voice of the student involved in their education.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So when, so when they are saying what's the purpose of this, right? Instead of telling them what the purpose is, asking them what the purpose is, or what do they define the purpose of their education should be, right? And then, involving them, whether it's about the content they're learning or the skills they need to learn, or even executive management, it's important that they are invested.
It is.
Right?
Absolutely.
And, and the investment has to come from their own creativity of developing a system that works for them instead of being told what to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or told what to learn too.
Yeah, that's definitely an important piece in this type of student as well. And I will also add, this hasn't been answered in all the cases, but the relationship also, I find that with this type of student, if you just have a relationship with them where they are not realizing their potential and not always turning in their work, and that's just the nature of your relationship with them, that's going to be a major fail.
It's the core. It becomes the core of your relationship.
Right. And they do not like that. They will not want to build a relationship with you. That is not motivating to them. They will look at you as another adult who's constantly telling them that they're falling short. But what I have found is that when you do build a relationship with them that is about who they truly are, what are their interests, why haven't, just like talking to them about why isn't this assignment or this unit speaking to you? Like, why isn't it resonating with you? Or why do you think, you're at school? Like, or what do you enjoy? That actually allows them to be a little bit more engaged in class. I think they feel more seen, and I have seen that be a helpful factor of they're just like, okay, she gets me, so I'll do this. I'll put in a little bit more effort.
Right.
I definitely have seen that as well.
Going back to, the original question about like the problem with gaming, or technology, students play video games because it's a quick dopamine hit fix, right? It's stimulation. It's communication too with other people as well. But on one track where I see teachers go down the wrong path is to try to gamify their lesson plans, right? Now, you see these fun games like Kahoot and things like that, and it's great. There's a serves a purpose, and they're a lot of fun. But I've seen teachers solely build their lessons around gamifying a system, creating point systems, or just like a video game, these are just quick dopamine fixes.
It's not deep learning.
It's not deep learning at all, and it's not sustainable, right? And they'll lose interest even faster, right? One thing that I've learned from working with teachers about technology is looking at technology. We need to look at the students using technology as moving away from being consumers. Right? They're consuming the content. They're consuming whatever the information that we're asking them to learn. Right? Rather than being consumers, we need to shift their mindset to creators. Right? So if we have a disengaged student, typically a male, if we have a disengaged student, then we need to ask them, how can you create, right? Create information or create a way where you are sharing me what you're learning.
Yeah. So it's a tool.
It's a tool.
Right.
Rather than a consuming tool,
right,
we need to you move it to a creating tool.
I love that. Yeah. Okay. Again, this is not going to answer all the questions, solve all the problems. And we should note that, there is no one-time fix it all. No. It is continuous. It is about being consistent. It is again and again, day after day, and you just have to keep at it. Our next scenario is with a female student where she is type A, perfectionist, possibly highly anxious, not possibly, but is highly anxious, very concerned about her grades and her future, quite possibly is having panic attacks about assignments and certainly major assessments. The parents are very concerned about their child's mental and emotional health, and they are actually not putting the pressure on the female student to earn A's. That pressure is actually coming from the student herself. So I have also seen this. I have seen anxiety amongst female students grow over the years, unfortunately. They just become so focused on earning an A and wanting to turn in a perfect assignment. Mm-hmm. And so I have seen female students cry in the bathroom. Mm-hmm. They have cried in front of me, and you can just feel just how tense they are about an assignment. And my gosh, it is difficult to sort of be in the moment with them, mm-hmm. because it does feel so tense at times, mm-hmm. and my heart goes out to them because these are very young girls, who are genuinely and struggling. What are your thoughts about this type of student?
Yeah, this is another scenario where, unfortunately, this is very typical throughout my career. Mm-hmm. And actually more recently, I've seen boys go through this too. Okay. But yeah, I think this is very deeply rooted in how the individual views themselves, mm-hmm. and that their identity, their identity is through their performance in grades. Mm-hmm. And a sense of self-worth. Mm-hmm. And so the anxiety or the insecurity of how they view themselves or amongst their peers, mm-hmm. is certainly rooted here. Mm-hmm. And I too, unfortunately, have seen many students, girls, have put a lot of pressure on themselves and have identified themselves, or they see recognition from their peers or even from the adults, mm-hmm. through their grades, mm-hmm. and a sense of perfectionism, mm-hmm. or OCD, mm-hmm. of how to get certain tasks done, mm-hmm. and they'll stay up all night or study mm-hmm. up all night until mm-hmm. a certain task is done. Is consuming. Yeah. And for those type of students, and it has to be in collaboration with the student and their family, hopefully can find some professional support to work through the cause and root, mm-hmm. of that. But I've also, seen how different schools approach it. And some students even hold brown bag lunches themselves. Mm-hmm. They feel empowered to hold only student spaces, mm-hmm. to talk about this.
That's great.
Yeah.
So they're supporting each other.
Yeah. Through that. They're more than just, mm-hmm. a grade.
Yeah.
All right.
I think that's great. I think anytime students can support each other through mm-hmm. these times, that is the ideal way to go about it, because they just care so much about what their peers think, and they do influence each other in ways that just adults can't. So, I think that's fantastic.
I think also that there also has to be a conversation about resilience. Mm-hmm. I think if your school has a retake policy, mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You really need to think about how you approach the purpose of a retake policy, mm-hmm. because these students, if they're scoring the 90th percentile and they want to take a retake,
I know,
yeah. You're like, yo, what's up? And some of these kids are like saying, oh, it's because I'm very driven to go to a certain school. So you do all these retakes, you get these perfect scores, mm-hmm. but what is that really teaching you?
Right.
But when something isn't right, or mm-hmm. when there is a challenge in the future, how are you learning to grow and overcome that? Or are you able to take a step back and really say, I really did the best I could, mm-hmm. on that. Mm-hmm. It is unfortunately something that is, is perpetuated. And on top of that, we just talked about social media. Social media plays on top of that too. We're in this like culture right now. So these students are on top of their own academic performance, looking for, liked, getting high scores. They're compounded with, their social media presence too, about what their body image is and what the culture says that how they should enact.
Yeah, it's super important for all kids, and it's a continuous conversation, as we were saying earlier, about, I think, who they are, where are they finding their value, where are they finding their fulfillment, how are they seeing themselves, and then I think it's also a conversation about what makes you happy, like really happy, not just everyone sees the A type of happy, which I'm sure does make them happy to some degree, but what are maybe the other things that also are serving you and fulfilling you, and can maybe some of that, can we start moving some of that energy to those places also? But I mean, we've talked about this on another episode, right? About just like the competition to get into certain colleges, the pressure that kids feel around that. I mean, I constantly tell students that you're going to make your life. The college, the university are not going to make your life, but I think the volume is much louder as far as, that the school that you get into is, above and beyond everything, including your happiness, including your self-worth, including, some of the most precious years of your life. So it's a hard one for a young person to handle. But again, I think just to be in conversation with this young female about what she is struggling with and how is she identifying and where she find value. And because I can't imagine when you're 15, 16, 17, you're striving for perfection, that there is a lot of joy and satisfaction. And so how can we start including some practices in life where you can find some of that?
A lot of this unfortunately starts at age 9.
9, so young.
So we got to really think about how we be more intentional for all of our students around 3rd, 4th grade. I mean, these are those truly are the formative years, and I give a shout out to all the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers. Actually, all teachers in general, but generally, like what brain research is sharing more about, creating academic anxiety starts forming, and friendships start forming around age 9.
Yeah.
And self-worth, like how they view themselves amongst their friends, how they view themselves, have self-reflection of self-worth.
And then you throw in social media.
Yeah, and you do that too.
Okay, well, we're going to go to our next group, and we're going to talk about parents.
Yay.
I'm sure you'll have way more to say about this than I will. But our first scenario is a student earns a quote-unquote unacceptable grade as far as the parents are concerned.
Flip the script on that one.
Yeah, exactly. And the parent contacts the teacher, contacts administration, and somewhat aggressively, they're very upset, very upset. If they're not angry, certainly bordering on anger. They're definitely questioning the teacher about the grade and how that the grade does not reflect the student's work and the student's achievement. And then it can sort of spill into other areas, like maybe talking about the course, the competency of the teacher, the value of the school. And so just dealing with a parent like that, because I mean, certainly I've had parents over the years contact me about grades here and there. And I would say, I'm open to the conversation. I think most teachers are. But when parents do get aggressive, we usually give it to the administrator. And it's your call, and it moves from there. So what are your thoughts about it?
I mean, I would say the majority, for those who are starting the profession, the majority of your parents are not going to be like this,
That's true. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I would say, truly parents really want to be partners with you. And but on the other end, you have to understand that whether you're public or private, these individuals that you teach every day are their most precious beings in their worlds, and So when they see their child struggle, they get concerned. And we touched a little bit about grief in the last episode, and something that as an administrator I have to look at is certainly from the lens of the child. My main goal is what is the experience of the child. Okay, so when something like this comes to me, I'm assuming that the teacher has worked, has done everything they could to support the child as best they can and try to communicate to the parents that they have done such. So with that, I will certainly support the teacher and walk the parents through, and then also certainly walk the parents through to the path of that, through that path of experience. But then if the teacher has done a lot in efforts to support the students, I generally will support the school. Right. All right. But I always just tell teachers, I can only support you until you don't let me, which I can't. If there are steps that are not taken, right, whether early communication, scaffolding, understanding the whole child's profile, being clear to the parents, if there are steps missing, then I can't support you.
Right. Right.
Then I'm looking, to see, I'm looking at the parent lens now.
Yeah. And that is rarely the case now, at least at the upper school, where you just have an assessment, you throw it out there, and then you just put a grade on it, right? There's all scaffolding, as you said, differentiation for assessments. You have to look at the profile and provide the accommodations. And then, rubrics are super important now in schools. And so an A is not just an A. There are multiple categories that are spelled out in detail, and students will earn a grade in each category. So even a grade is broken down into multiple categories that are explained to understand the grade. So absolutely, it's never just a grade that gets thrown out there.
Right. And like what I said before, when I feel like all the I's have been dotted and the T's have been crossed, and that we've had a very thorough process, and when I say I support the school, I certainly approach the parent conversation as in, you have to understand that you are invested in this school, public or private, right? Invested in this school for a reason. That you are entrusting us with your babies, your children.
You have to have trust in the
right?
School.
And that we are the professionals here. Now, certainly, when I speak to parents, I always provide space for people to share with me their perspective, and and maybe if there's something in the experience that I don't know about. All right. But if they are just this egregious, well, one, if anyone's coming in hot, right, I give them a little piece. But if they're continuing to come in, not seeking clarity or working in partnership, then I end the conversation until we can. Right, because we are not going to accomplish anything through emotions, right? And I set that kind of a tone as for the culture of the school, not only for the teachers and students, but for certainly the parents, that we are in a partnership here. Yeah. Partnership for the success and growth of your child. Yeah. Right? And if they have questions about curriculum, if they have questions about the approach of pedagogy, if they have questions about, the teaching practice of the adult in the room, the teacher, then I certainly will allow them to have that questions or opinions. But overall, I'm going to say that the school is not a la carte.
Right.
Okay. School is not a la carte. If I feel that the teacher is well trained, has communicated in a proper, respectful way, supported the student as best they could, and the student did not do A, B, and C, or could not accomplish A, B, and C, then that's just growth.
Right. Right.
Right. And that's a learning experience for the student. And they get what they get. Right. And they'll have to grieve about that. Okay. They have to grieve that. All right. And they have to figure it out. How can they move forward, working with the teacher to move forward. The relationship with the student and the teacher is the most important. That I want to make sure that is always going to be held intact. The parents can throw shade at the school and me, the teacher, as much as they can. All right. But the relationship with the teacher and student has to be intact. Yeah. And protected because they have to move on.
Yeah. And the student has to walk into that classroom, for the rest of the year, every day, and maybe even beyond that.
Right. Now, as a private school, though, those parents may be coming in saying, hey, what am I paying for? Right. That's a big shift when I went from public to private. I'm now the students or the families now considered a customer. What am I paying for, right? If my student's not doing well in this class, what am I paying for then? Well, then you have to, like, again, stick to the mission of the school.
Yes.
Right?
Very important.
You
Absolutely.
are investing in this school because you believe in the mission
Yes.
and the philosophy and our approach.
Right. And you signed up to this school.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've had to say, like, school's not a la carte. You can't choose teachers, choose your curriculum. And I said, if you don't feel we're mission aligned anymore, then maybe it's better that, you find a place that, you feel more comfortable.
Yeah. And I mean, that must be such a hard conversation
really
to
hard.
have with families.
It's a child you're talking about here.
Right.
I think when I'm talking to the parents, I have to stay student-centered, right? Because even though they're being loving parents and they're being protective because they care and love so much of their child, they're having a bias and a blind spot, right? Because they're pointing fingers at the school, not at themselves or the child, where I have to focus on the child.
Yeah. I think that mission alignment is so important because that is why we're all here. That's what keeps the institution function and running and moving forward. Because if we move to the whims of any individual, whether it's a parent, a family, a child, a teacher, an administrator, that I think is shaky ground. And that is not what everyone signs up for. Right? We're signing up to this institution that has a specific mission, a certain philosophy that we're all contributing to. And that is a vision that's greater than any one of us. And that, I think, is a great piece to just like keep coming back to.
I mean, I know I talked to like my friends and my colleagues who are still in public school, and they feel like because of this cancel culture or like now legal culture that, families may jump into, starting suing schools and teachers, a lot of administrators, unfortunately, will not protect them or support them in a way. They feel like they give in. Administrators now tend to give in to families. And that's heartbreaking to me because the administration can hold true to the school values, but also, most importantly, make decisions what is best for the child. Then they are living to what you were just talking about. But unfortunately, I've heard of many scenarios where, the parents have, or school board have gotten more involved in developing, a curriculum criticizing the jobs of teachers.
Well, I think
performance.
I think we sort of touched upon actually the next parent scenario, which is when parents disapprove of content being taught in class, right? And they want content removed or added based on their own personal beliefs or perspectives. I imagine some of your approach is what you just said.
I mean, I also try to use data or standards to, uphold the decisions of the school. If our teachers are developing a curriculum that's, research-based, standards-based, then I always rely on that because we are now using education, higher education, one of the appropriate practices to support our curriculum or practice.
Yeah. As an English teacher, history teacher, I usually get questions from parents like, why aren't you, and especially recently, I mean, I have taught the classics. I've taught classics for many years. I'm still open to teaching classics, but my current curriculum, it's not so much pulled from the American canon. And so I get a lot of questions about that. I always tell parents, no reading list is perfect. Even when I do include the canon, it's never perfect because ideally, I do love some classic literature and I want to read some contemporary texts by voices that historically have not been heard as much. So to me, that is the perfect reading list, but it's never perfect. I've never gotten it quite right. I also tell parents that a lot of what we do in class are skills-based, right? So the exposure is important to the content, but what they really, I think, walk away with are skills. And that is definitely part of my job too. So if we're working on skills and the students are strengthening and honing their skills, then, what we're supposed to be doing is getting done.
I agree 100%. You're building skills in your class to allow your students to have access to whatever they read, whatever they want to read, whatever style they want to read.
Yeah.
Right. And I think when parents come to say, hey, you should be reading Frankenstein, you should be reading, Of Mice and Men, you should be reading, To Kill a Mockingbird, it's great. I mean, but they're also remembering their
of course
education.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And, they're not recognizing that the teachers today are professionals for today. They are professionals for today's brain, for today's student, right? And the approach and the faces, all right, are much more diverse these days. The learning styles, the cultures. I mean, the schools are much more diverse in so many different ways. I'm not just talking about race. I'm talking about learning styles too, right? Neurodiversity, right? And so the professionals in those spaces now are now supported by so much more research now of the brain, you know, and of social awareness and competency, emotional awareness and competency, right? So what we remember as students
So different.
is very different than how it should be done today.
Yeah. When we were talking about like the learning management systems before, and we were talking about like how we grew up. I mean, I remember having that little spiral notebook homework pad. That was it compared to all the LMSs that are out there now.
Absolutely.
Okay, so shall we move on, or
Absolutely.
is there anything you want to add? Okay.
No, I'm good.
Our last group are colleagues. Our own colleagues, the people we work with, the people we're on the same side, the same team. We've all signed up for the same, you know, mission and philosophy and institution, and we're all in the good fight together. And yet, we still find ourselves not always in agreement, and maybe even having some issues and problems. My goodness.
No, we signed up this job to work with kids, not with adults.
Yeah, and yet, we're definitely, something's going on. We have a couple of different scenarios. First one that comes up that I think encompasses a lot are just communication styles. Like, you know, when you're communicating about something, and, you know, I'm very straightforward. And I'm confrontational, and I think to some degree there's like a negative connotation about that. I don't see it like that, but I know it's out there. You know, I am confrontational in a way that I will be intentional in how I speak to you. I will be respectful in how I speak to you. I will be professional in how I speak to you, but I'm going to name the situation. I'm going to name my experience of it, and I'm going to say that this thing bothered me, or, you know, whatever it may be. And I've gotten some interesting responses there. So
In what ways?
So when I go into those situations, I'm looking for acknowledgement, and then ownership, and then some sort of resolution where we can move forward. And like, okay, I can see, you know, what I did made you feel that way. That wasn't my intention, but I can understand impact. You know, maybe there's an apology, but we can move on. And so that is always my hope. And I don't always get that, you know. The other piece is sometimes I do get that, and yet the behavior, the colleague does the same thing to me again.
What you're describing, you're like the unicorn. I'm listening to you share some confidence about, you know, the type of communication you need and you expect is so very rare. You know, I would even say just amongst adults.
Yeah.
Personally wish more people would have the approach as you do. Because from the majority of the adults that I've worked with, whether I was a colleague, as an educator, or now as an administrator, or even parents, people are conflict averse. And you hit the nail on the head. People use the word conflict as a negative thing, right? And it just means that there's some discrepancy and miscommunication, or something that is not feeling right, or not to have something accomplished, right? So that's the conflict, right? But it doesn't have to be, you have to go to war.
Right. It doesn't have to become personal. And some of it has become personal. You realize, okay, well, we're colleagues. I doubt we will ever be friends.
Right. It's okay.
Yeah. And absolutely. That is absolutely okay. You don't have to feel good personal relationships with everybody in the building.
No, but if you're not unable to communicate your feelings about an issue, then you're just going to hold it up. You're going to, you know, keep it stuffed in. You're going to be passive aggressive. You're going to create a stronger bias and a stronger sense of separation with that particular person, you know, a greater separation from that person, because you have not shared your feelings. Or even like if someone's doing something to you consistently and they don't know it, if you haven't talked to them, they still don't know it. Or if they do know it, right, right, they will continue to manipulate you because you haven't said anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say something, and I think about it too. It's not like every little thing that comes up, I say something. I'm like, okay, is it, how much is this bothering me? Do I really need to say something? Can I just go on about my job? So I'm very thoughtful about it. It's not like just something happens and then all of a sudden I'm like, going to the person. So I think you have to be intentional in that way and thoughtful in that way. But I am not always like tethered to the response. So again, like I would like this response. I would like us to move forward in this mutually respectful way as I see it. But at this point in the game, I understand I'm not always going to get that. And so depending on what I get, then I move accordingly.
No, that's really smart. I mean, I think when I say teachers are conflict averse, they may approach something in two ways. Well, one, they'll go straight to their boss or colleague and basically vent about the situation, right? Or even talk trash about the situation, or they come at the person like kind of attacking them or accusatory. Now, when I see teachers do that, I often say, when parents communicate with you, when they're coming, we just like that last scenario we were talking about, coming at you with all these accusations, right? How does it feel for you? Right. And when we tell parents is we want you to be partners and come and ask with clarity, seek clarity. So if you are misunderstanding a dynamic between a colleague, you should look for clarity and provide examples of how certain situations have made you feel. If a colleague comes to me, if a teacher comes to me and says, Susan's doing all this and it's hurting my work dynamics or hurting my work style, I won't even blink. I'll say, have you talked to Susan about it yet?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We want students to do that too.
Absolutely.
By the way. We want students to come to us first.
Right. So, but then like you said, you're not tethered to the response if you're not getting the response to it. Yeah. So then if the situation, if you're trying to address the situation professionally, seeking clarity, trying to compromise, work through things, but the pattern or behavior is still consistent, then that's when a supervisor has to step in and create structures, all right, to support the relationship. Or try to just like, maybe if the other person is not communicating in a certain way, right, then try to find the root of that.
Yeah. I mean, I remember there was this one teacher who sent me what I would describe as, it was professional and disrespectful. Before I responded, I went to members in the school, administrative members in the school, and I said, does the school, are they co-signing this this email? Because if they are, then it's me against the school. That's different, right? If it's just me sort of like having a problem with the teacher, that's one thing. But if the school thinks that the email is okay, that's something else. In that situation, they were like, absolutely not. So then I was able to then go directly to the teacher and sort of voice my concern and my lack of appreciation for that communication. And then there was another case where I remember, so I had said to, a teacher did something, I didn't like it. I said, please don't do that again. And they did it again. And from there, I just knew that I could not trust this person, this colleague. And I did not pretend that is how I moved. That is how I worked with the colleague. I cannot trust you, so I'm going to now act professionally and respectfully, but I can't trust you. And so you might want me to check in with you about everything. You might want me to share whatever it may be, but I am not going to do that. I will provide what I need to do so that that's kind of expected for whatever the task is in our working together. But there's going to be a certain level of tension there. There's going to be a certain amount of distance there, but I will be able to move. I will be able to work and move forward, And I think it's not ideal. It's never ideal, but sometimes that's just the way it is too. And that's okay. That is okay.
Yeah.
If you are still doing your job and that person is still doing the job, you can have some degree of tension and it's okay. Yeah.
Can I ask if you documented all that, like when you're in your attempts? Because a lot of these conversations happen face to face, and what sometimes gets in the way or troubling further down the road is then accusations start happening, or someone said, "Oh, you never said that," or People don't remember the situation the same.
So I am not great at that. So I know I have colleague friends who are much more apt to make sure that there's always a follow-up email.
Summarizing the conversation
absolutely.
you had, action steps moving forward.
I think it is super important.
Something that I was never told in my young career.
Yeah, but absolutely. I think it's very, very important because you're right. People can go back. People will talk about you behind your back. They will go to supervisors and talk about you, and you think everything is sort of okay, and they will sort of create a narrative about you. So it is important for you to follow up with email or even just have your own notes, whatever, maybe some documentation. So I think I've been fortunate maybe in my career that so far that it hasn't come to that end where I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I had notes. I wish I had sent a follow-up email. I think this is very specific to me. I think I just work and navigate in a way that, I see it and I just know I need to move differently. So my reliance and trust and dependency on you is now at a minimum. So it doesn't escalate to that point, at least to this point in my career. Who knows next week? No. Who knows what could happen?
Sometimes when I see this behavior amongst my staff or colleagues, I chuckle because I'm like, wow, like we are acting like middle schoolers. Yeah. This is like acting like our students right now. But it is my job to create a culture within the school, or not only for the students, for the families, but for the teachers too, a collaborative culture and a professional culture. And so I'm very clear on what type of expectations I have and how to be a professional in my school, whether that be communication, whether that be in collaboration working with a student. But if there is tension between teachers, that's something that, I am responsible of helping them navigate. Like you said, they don't have to be best friends, but as long as they are working professionally, respectfully with one another in the towards the success of their students, then that's okay. If there's any type of communication that is disrespectful, like trash talking, then that I actually address that very quickly.
Yeah,
because you're not meeting a standard or an expectation that the school has.
Yeah.
And if you can't do that, then I'm going to write you up.
That's just straight up professionalism. I mean, it's one thing if you're doing it, in my case, not in my case, in my view, with like your bestie at school, like you two together. But if you're just going around talking to colleagues and talking badly, that is not professional.
No.
So that is important to note. What about condescending tones or patronizing tones? Have you...
Certainly, I've addressed that with staff members. That's when I start really talking about intent versus impact. The majority of the time, people don't realize they're doing it or recognizing the situation. They're very caught up on a certain issue or something that centers on a student, all right, or something on their job, and they don't realize the manner in which they're communicating.
Yeah. I remember years ago, I was sharing a classroom with another teacher, and the spaces were not ideal. So it was really a high stress environment in every regard, and certainly in sharing space. And I had the class a certain way, and so the desks were sort of everywhere. And then she was coming in teaching, so she wanted the desk a certain way for her class. Totally makes sense. As we're moving, she sort of snapped at me, and in a tone that was not okay. So I continued to, help, and I just said, don't ever talk to me like that again. And she didn't expect that and was just like, oh, but I was like, no. Just don't ever talk to me like that again. And we just, I just continued to help, to move the desk. But, you just sort of had to say it and put it.
I give you credit. Again, you're like a unicorn. For me, I don't think about it until like maybe a day when I walk away from the situation. Also, and I'm like, oh my God, that just happened. But I also know myself too. I don't like to have hard conversations with emotions.
Yes. That's really important too.
So like if you are not a person that just can draw that quick boundary, like don't ever talk to me like that again, or you're unable to, make that happen in real time, it's still okay to come back to it.
Oh, 1,000%. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. But yeah, like we were saying before, just if it's like simmering in you, if it's like leaving something in you, you probably do want to address it. And, and you could talk to someone to maybe guide you through it, to talk to somebody that maybe can help you give the language in dealing with it.
I think, like, going back to, I think what we said in maybe a previous episode, that I don't think when people get into education, they realize how much schools are like a social experiment.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right. It is all about communication.
Yes.
You get, like I said, you get into the profession because you want to help kids, because you like kids. But then the reality is you have to not only communicate with kids, you have to communicate with adults on different layers.
Yeah.
So hopefully our conversation today.
Can I just add one more
Sure.
thing? On the flip side, though, is, and I think part of why I don't dwell so much on the, when negative interactions happen, is because I do have so many positive relationships in this school, right? And that is something that I care about. I want to build and develop positive relationships with my colleagues. They are, it's almost as important, if not as important, as with my students. So it helps to offset, to go through, to navigate all those difficult experiences and times. So, but yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, like, the schools are definitely areas where we are constantly learning how to communicate with one another.
Yes, we definitely are. Okay. All right. I think that's it.
We're done.
All right. Thanks. Bye. See
Take
you.
care.